Hello and welcome to ATG the podcast, and I'm very pleased to be talking today to Russell Michalak, who's director of the library at Goldey-Beacom College. Russell, can I call you Rusty?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's great.
Excellent. So Rusty, let's start right with your background. You studied history. Why the interest in history?
History is just is present now, and it's present in everything that we do, and it's great to know what's going on in the world now, and it gives it context when we do anything in the world, with current events to government to politics to just working with people and having an understanding of where people come from, and it helps with just learning empathy of how people have come to different places.
Sounds good, but the only thing about history is it doesn't immediately lead to a career. So, how did you get into
No, it
libraries?
doesn't. I think I've been in libraries pretty much my whole life. My mother was a librarian. My first book, I remember this book that came from the University of Washington University Librarian, and it was a dictionary when I was about 10 years old, and it totally changed everything. I already had dictionaries, but the fact that he thought of me when I was on my birthday it was just a neat experience, and it just kind of it adhered me to the profession. So it kind of seemed like it was just a natural fit. And I think I explored and tried to rebel against librarians as much as possible and not do what my mother did. But it kept on, I just kept on coming back to it.
Sounds good. So, where did you study librarianship?
I went to graduate school at University of Wisconsin-Madison
Okay, and
many
but you've been
decades
at
ago
Goldey-Beacom
now.
College for quite a while.
I have been at Goldey-Beacom for quite a while. I came here, honestly, for family, and I have not left. So I started my career actually at the University of Utah, and I've worked all sorts of different places: University of Utah, University of Wisconsin-Madison, Duke University, Claremont Colleges, Widener. I even worked at a small stint at the North Carolina Supreme Court Library. So I think that goes back to that history thing where it's like it prepares you to do work in all sorts of different fields and all different types of libraries. And having that liberal arts education that I got from Occidental College is really is it was key to all that. So while I was a history major, allowed me to also take classes in all sorts of different subjects that has helped me at a school like Goldie Beacom, where I can't be the subject specialist for everybody, but it allows me to have a little bit of knowledge about every different subject that all faculty teach.
I have to confess, I had to look up Goldey-Beacom to find out exactly where it was. Maybe I'm not the only one. So whereabouts is it?
Goldie Beacom is in Wilmington, Delaware, and I think in all my speeches I say we're one of the oldest colleges that you've never heard of. But we also have we are one of those, we made the bringing colleges together of different names popular before that actually became popular. So we've gone under many different names. Goldie Beacom was actually two different colleges in 1886. Mr. Beacom and Mr. Goldie actually fought over shorthand, and they didn't. One thought it was artistic, and one thought it was a business method, and they had two separate schools until about 1929 when they were forced to merge again after they were originally just Goldie College at first. And so I think Mr. Beacom wanted it to be more artistic, and so eventually they combined it again. But they had all sorts of mergers over the years where we've acquired different colleges, and as many colleges are now facing that. So we've had a rich history. We've been around for a while, but yes, we're one of those small colleges that many people haven't heard of, but when they have heard of us, it's hard to forget about us. So it's cool.
What kind of subjects? Is it across the board or specialized?
I think originally we were more of a business college, and we were originally more of basically a feeder to DuPont company because that's the main employer in the area. And we graduated a lot of kind of the administrative class of the DuPont company. That's what we originally were doing, but we're currently reworking our educational curriculum to be more generalized and more liberal arts-esque. So as we've had many mergers, we've also worked through our curriculum in many different ways. We're adding different majors, including psychology, criminal justice, um, sports management, and things like that. So we run the gamut. I think we're still probably more known to be a business school, but we have all sorts of things. We have a very strong English department, and that's where a lot of our innovative AI work has actually come about. Our English faculty are more interested in using AI tools than many of our business faculty, which is kind of the opposite of many colleges that I've talked to.
Well, AI, of course, is one of the big changes. So, what else has changed in the 15 years you've been at Goldey-Beacom?
I think that we've done a lot of different things that a lot of other colleges have to experience. We've reduced our print books because for a variety of reasons, which is unfortunate. But we've also worked on creating working through consortiums to do shared print collections. And so we still have access to things, but we don't have as much of a print collection. But we also have a very beautiful library where a lot of students come to study, mingle, and just kind of build relationships, and that's very important as part of a library. So it's kind of more of a hub to share ideas than it is to read books. And that's one of the things that at least our library, how it has changed, and we've expanded in many different ways. But we've also, while we've contracted, we've also expanded in terms of keeping our population here. I think when I first came here, when I first started, we were still a kind of a 1980s library. We had stacks of CDs that we used for stuff, and that was about 2011. And so that we increased our collection size from 90,000 to over 1 million items, and so which is really cool. And we also increased our gate count from probably less than about 20,000 people a year to well over 1 million people come into our library every year. So it's really cool. Those are different things. And we also, last year, we had a really neat program with the Americans in the Holocaust through the American Library Association and in the U.S. National Holocaust Museum. So we're working a lot on bringing in programs and ideas to kind of challenge ideas and challenge the way of students' ways of thinking, expose them to new ideas.
Because you're running a very small institution, you have the you have the problem of trying to keep up to date with in the same way that sort of Harvard and Yale does. But how do you manage it with small resources?
I think our small resources allow us to be more innovative and challenge traditional thinking. I think that while we can learn a lot from the bigger schools, we also can pivot on a dime, but everything that we do is basically related to the curriculum. If we can't tie it to the curriculum, there's no point in doing it. So what's neat, well, we don't have to go through the millions of committees that maybe a larger school has to. We do have the challenge of we have to convince faculty that that's a good idea. And so, but once we get faculty on board, the sky's the limit, and we can do a lot of really neat things that probably at a larger school we wouldn't be able to do in a much shorter amount of time.
You mentioned the term library culture, and this seems to be kind of fundamental, and we've come under, you've authored a book recently. So do you think there is such a thing as a library culture?
I think there is definitely a library culture. I think that which is good and bad. I think that there's toxic cultures in all institutions, whether it's in higher education or corporate culture. And the problem with places like libraries where there might not be as much turnover, some of these toxic cultures can be embedded in that culture, and it's very hard to make those changes to affect positive results.
You didn't mince your words in that you've co-authored a book called Toxic Dynamics: Disrupting, Dismantling and Transforming Academic Library Culture. So it sounds pretty bad. Is it that bad?
I think higher education needs some reform, and I think that, and not just in libraries, I think I think we all need more leadership development, and I think that with our smaller budgets, especially professional development budgets, I think a lot of it could be used for leadership development that could, positively impact higher education and library cultures to kind of work on each other, work on our relationships with people.
One of the strange things, I haven't worked in libraries, but I've worked in large and small organisations, and the thing I remember from very small organisations, 20, 30 people, is you're kind of running to stand still in that your time for reflection is it seems to be minimal. But and here you are at a small institution with looking at these situations. How do you get the time to do it?
I don't think I ever have the time to do anything, but sometimes the people who have the time don't have any time to do anything or keep on are handed things that all the time because you're always busy. I think I'm working 7 days a week, and that's it can run into burnout, but also it does impact my scholarship of how about leadership and toxic dynamics in different cultures, and I'm well aware of those things because I'm living it myself. So these things, those real lived experiences do impact my scholarship. And I think that's important as we teach our students autoethnography and other things and the just different types of scholarships. Is we very much believe at the college in experiential learning, and that's also how they make learning more real life and not just these theoretical things, and that we try to get them to understand. We bring our real life experiences to the table when we teach.
In the book, it's a series of contributed chapters, so it covers different aspects. But among the aspects I noticed, you've got things like the relationship between the library and faculty. And is that something that needs work? Does that work well?
There's a loaded question there, right? I think it can. I think everything's about building relationships, and I think that it can't. Sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't work. I think both parties need to come to the table to want to work together, and if one party doesn't want to work with each other, then it's going to be a hard road to do. But I think that when it does work, it's a really great collaboration because the intersection of the different knowledge bases can lead to something really cool for our students.
One of the aspects of library culture that fascinates me is particularly with the advent of AI. The library's always been involved in providing kind of tools and guidance for students, but it seems to be increasing these days as the number of technical tools increases and the range to choose from. Do you think that's true?
I think that libraries need to do a better job of letting certain things go. I think as working at a small college and a small library, that's one of the things that I had to come to grips with. That if I had continued working at larger schools, better resource schools, that I would probably never have experienced. But I was forced to do that, and I think that there are certain things that don't have impact, and we need to let those things go. And if there are new technological things, we need to learn them. And our job is knowledge disseminators. We are also knowledge creators. And we need to show students things that will be practical for them to get a job. And so while it's great to, share the theoretical stuff, which is extremely important, it's also important for them to learn new things so that the new tools that they can bring to their job interview and saying, yeah, I've worked with that and I know what XYZ may be, whether that's AI or podcasting or any other different tool that comes about. And it's important for us to pivot at different times. And I think we are at a revolution with AI that is not going to change. Whether we like it or not, you can be an do believe in AI refusal and not use it at all, or you can go full tilt toward AI. But we have to meet somewhere in the middle. And I think that's true for library culture and it's true for AI. And that will be integral. And as we go forward, I think that we can't lean on the echo chamber of one side or the other, and we have to realize that there is change in the world whether we like it or not, and our job is to help our students make an informed decision of what tools they do or do not use. and as long as it fits into the curriculum, because that's how we get our money.
Well, one of the things that impressed me at a recent you're involved in a recent webinar, and you gave what I thought was a very detailed and confident talk about specific tools that many of your students had been using with feedback, and that surprised me because to get to that level of knowledge, you require to roll your sleeves up and get some really sort of hands-on knowledge of these tools. So is that a role you think the library should have?
I think every library needs to look at their population and their colleges or universities' mission and see if that actually fits with them. So I can't say that every college should do it, but I strongly encourage people to look at AI and incorporate it into the curriculum. I think that there's a lot of really neat things that are going on with AI, and I think that the students really, we've had some really interesting and deep conversations about AI that we weren't having with information literacy, and we would get that has changed. And I think the fundamental part of what we teach in AI is critical thinking. It's just not that different from information literacy, and so the ability to accept or refuse writing suggestions is an important step in being information literate as well as being AI literate. Going back to your question of rolling up your sleeves and doing it, we've actually had a library license to AI tools since 2019. And so we've had Grammarly, we've had Discover, which I always say is the one AI tool that went bust after OpenAI launched ChatGPT, which is a really cool knowledge graph discovery tool. We adopted LitMaps, which is actually a tool that is out of New Zealand, and it's a citation mapping tool, and with an AI layer to it, a generative AI layer to it. We actually won an American Library Association Innovation Teaching Award last year for our adoption of LitMaps, which was really neat. And we use Scholarly, and Scholarly is probably the one thing that's been hard for our faculty to adopt because there's so many other ways to use Gen AI to summarize articles, but where it has really helped is for students with learning disabilities. And so it's really the way it's packaged has helped our students read small bits of information for especially students who are dyslexic and have ADHD.
You mentioned and that was quite sort of a pioneering tool. There weren't many institutions that made use of it. So, based on your experience, and I would have thought a tool like would require quite a steep learning curve for you and for your students. So, based on the knowledge you've gained, is there one tool that you think that stands out as sort of something that all institutions should be using?
No, that's actually a really good question. I don't think there is actually one tool. I really contemplated that as you were asking that question, and I think each thing needs to solve a problem. And I think that if each tool you adopt, you can have too many, and you can have maybe too few, or not any at all. And I think really it's just not having not any at all is probably the bigger problem. We use Grammarly for writing. We use LitMaps to teach scholarship as a conversation. We use Scholarly to help evaluate information. So each one solves a particular thing that we are trying to teach. And so that is important, at least for us in our library and our faculty. And so if we couldn't tie it to some sort of learning outcome and objective, then we probably need to reassess why we are paying for for an expensive tool.
How do you discover the new tools? Do the suggestions, the ideas come from because the students are using them, or because faculty are using them, or from your own reading? Yeah.
Kind of combination. I discovered new tools through a combination of all sorts of things. I think scholarship through reading. I publish quite often. I think also I've had a business for quite a while now, and so talking to people outside in the corporate world has helped a lot of learning how people use different tools. So it makes me aware of these different tools. But I think the biggest one is actually just paying attention to what our students are doing. So we noticed that students, when we adopted Grammarly, that students were already using Grammarly, but they didn't realize that there was a free version versus a paid version. And so we wanted to democratize access to these AI tools so that everyone is having the same experience. And so really we're just paying attention to what our students are doing is the best way for us to adopt new tools. And it's also the easiest way for us to get more money from our administration to pay for these tools. If students are using it, we want to make sure that they are having the same access all the way around.
Do you find that new students are increasingly familiar with AI when they arrive, or do they need sort of help in making use of it?
I think that, well, the students can be, they are becoming more familiar with AI and use it different places. Every high school that we've experienced treats AI differently. So there's three school districts actually in Newcastle County, which is in Delaware, and each school district treats AI slightly differently. One basically says you can never use it. One says you can use it with limitations, and one says you can actually use it wholesale, and that's totally fine. So depending on where they come from, it really depends on how experienced they are. But I think they still need more hands-on experience with it, with guidance. And one of the things that we teach our students in Grammarly is that it's absolutely okay to have there's an overall score in Grammarly, and a lot of people really hone in on getting to 100%. We teach them that it's okay to be at 75% and to reject things as long as we want to keep your voice. And I think when the presentation that you were talking about, one of our students actually put in one of his papers and put it into the AI chat in Grammarly, and he's like, make my paper more juicy. And he started out with this narrative essay, and in this narrative essay he had about 1,000 words, and after he put in the prompt to make my paper more juicy, it went to about 5,000 words, and he starts reading, he's like, my voice is gone. And so I think we need to give our students those experiences to see that, like, it's okay to use AI to help with the flow of your paper or grammatical errors, but also you don't want to lose your agency, and that's important what you're doing, so that when you do use these AI tools, that you're better informed how you're using them.
You talked about the phrase information literacy, but there's increasingly the term AI literacy. So do you think there is an AI literacy?
That's a very loaded question. Good question. I don't know. No, I think that we need to still work it through, and I think that there's a lot of different definitions of it. Just I think there's a lot of different definitions of plagiarism. One of our early works was actually on faculty definition of plagiarism. I think that there is not one definition of plagiarism, and I don't think we'll ever really get to one definition of AI literacy. And I've tried to work that through with my writing in scholarship to kind of create one unified thing. But I think each experience for our students is going to be different depending on the type of college that they're going to, and with the contraction of colleges, I think that we're putting a lot of different students' experiences, a lot of students who have a lot of different experiences all in one college. And I think that to define something like that is actually going to hurt us in the long run. I think that we need to be able to adapt to those things, but eventually have some sort of standards that we come to agreement on, but we're not there yet to do that.
Are you actually encouraging the students to make use of AI for their assignments?
We require them to use AI for their assignments, but we also, if they refuse to use AI for their assignments, we give them an alternative choice.
Do you find that so if you require them, I mean, is that why is that?
We want them to go in. I mean, we are more or less a workforce development college, and we want them to go into their interview saying that they have experience using AI, because we're finding that in many job interviews that there is an increasing, that question is asked. And I've had student workers come back and say, well, like, I really didn't know why you were making us do X, Y, Z with AI in the library. But one of the questions they asked was about that, and I was actually able to answer it very thoughtfully, and I got the job. So we want them to basically go into that interview and their work life with that experience, so they don't have a deficit compared to other people. And so why we might, and that's important to us. I think that it's important for them to have had that experience, and our school is an emerging Hispanic institution. We have students who are educationally disadvantaged, first gen students, students who might not have ever gone to college. And I think that we want them to get a leg up to some of their peers who are going into the workforce, and giving them that option of working with AI when they probably could never have afforded it in the first place, especially when not even buying their textbooks. Then that's kind of one of the key things about GBC that is special. I think giving the democratization of access to tools like that is cool.
You used the phrase building culture. So what do you mean by that?
I think that can go in many different directions, but building culture is basically taking innovation one step at a time and taking small steps to make that change. One of my colleagues, Dr. Brett Shepard, who's head of the English department here, we started out with an assignment with lit maps, and we tested it out. And we believe through iteration, we basically built a assignment for the whole critical writing 1 and 2 composition course that all faculty now adopted. And so we take it little steps at a time to build that culture, to take AI, so that AI is part of the students' experiences. But we couldn't have had that happen, and we wouldn't have been able to win that award through ALA without building culture. So all of our faculty have different opinions, experience, and expertise in AI, and we kind of win them over with our adoption of AI one step at a time.
Do you think your unique position in the library, being sort of outside all the individual subject faculties, that you might have the opportunity to sort of help build this kind of stuff in a way that the faculties themselves wouldn't be able to?
I think that having an outside-in lens helps a lot with building these things, but I think you have to have a culture, have already built a culture of innovation. And so one of the things that all of our student workers do is use AI. So I think when faculty look at what we're doing and the experiences that our student workers have, they say, oh, like I think I would like that for all my other students. And one of the things that's really neat about GBC is that our faculty really, really care about our students. And so that unique experience of we're not in a lecture hall of 800 people. We have classes of about 20 students, and all the faculty know who they are. And so when they see one of their students and they come to student workers, go to a faculty member saying, I'm doing this really neat thing in the library using AI, whether it's maybe using JSTOR's digital stewardship like SQLite, creating metadata, or two student workers, international student workers, recently curated and created metadata for a visual history book of the college, and that was really cool using AI. And so they talk about their experiences, and so the faculty are like, well, maybe we could adopt some of that stuff for our class. So I think the outside in lens is important, but also you need to lead through experience, and we do that here in the library, and that innovation is crucial to our mission and vision.
You're very modest about it, but it sounds to me like quite an achievement. Sort of, I don't know how common it is for faculty for the entire college to pick up a sort of to adopt something which was developed for one faculty and everyone likes it. Institutions don't often work like that.
No, they don't. But I think that's what makes GBC special. I think that the faculty trust each other, and I think that they know that we want the best for our students, and I think they see that it's working really well for them, and so they're willing to try something out that they may not have wanted to do. And I think it's even what's actually more amazing is most of these faculty are adjuncts, and so they have huge loads on their shoulders from traveling from one college to another. So the fact that they're even willing to try something new and innovative, and then also give suggestions. We had one faculty member who's an adjunct who teaches at Haverford here and maybe some other places as well, Dell State, I think, at different times. And we were doing a visual expressions using AI. And she's like, well, I would like to look at I would like the AI to evaluate the students' work and through ethos, logos, and pathos. I was like, I think we could actually do that. So after in one class, we were able to transition the next week and use JSTOR SQLite to provide feedback to the students' work, and some of those students' work won an award for their visual expression in the library exhibit that we had for all the visual expressions. So I think that's one of the neat things, is that we give everyone has a voice here, and whether it's an adjunct faculty, a full-time faculty member, the librarian, the students, everyone has a voice, and their voice matters.
That's an impressive range of input. But you've been involved in this kind of area because you run your own consultancy, something called Inclusive Knowledge Solutions. How did that come about?
That came about more or less through our book, but also through a friendship through Trevor Dawes. We run that company together, and I think we both have an extensive experience with running different types of libraries. And we were actually going to an ARL event in San Diego, and we were kind of chatting, like, this would actually make a lot of sense. And I think that our different experiences lead to a good partnership.
Isn't it difficult? It's one thing to look at your own culture, but to go into sort of an institution you've never seen before and advise them and to see if you can improve things. It's not so simple.
Oh, it's never simple, and it's hard to give feedback to people who aren't ready for feedback. And so I think that having the outside lens is critical for change. And I think that doing it from the inside is extremely hard. So having that outside lens where you come in and chat with different stakeholders at the college and get all the feedback and bring it to the committee who's been assigned to make that change is critical to make change in a place that might have some toxic dynamics.
One of the benefits, although you might not have set out to do this, is that by examining many different institutions and how they work, you build up a really rich picture, which people working at institutions don't really get because you don't move around so frequently. So, do you think there may be another book there in sort of, you looking at how institutions work?
Well, yeah, I haven't moved around in the last 16 years, but I've worked at a lot of institutions, and I've seen it all. And so. And having a mother who has worked in libraries, you see even more. And so, I keep myself active in a lot of different associations and through ACRL and such. And so I've seen all those things. And but yeah, to another book, we just actually, Trevor and I submitted a proposal for a book on defining individual success in an organization. So I think there's certain things in life that you might, like me, who has been at an institution for a long time, and that might not have been my career goals in the beginning. We can all find different ways of success that will lead to improvement of the organization. And so that's kind of our companion volume to Toxic Dynamics, and looking at success at an individual level within the organization.
Are there kind of simple maxims for success? Do you think it's it's possible to to come up with a formula?
You know what? I think there isn't. I think there never will be a formula, because you can have people outside of librarianship or higher education that think what success might be, and that might be making loads and loads of money. Some people's success could be quite different, and and I think what the book could do is show that to everybody. Show people that everyone has their own definition of success, and that's something that in your career that you have to define for yourself. But by doing that, you will make your organization better.
You mentioned ACRL and getting involved in associations. This is another thing that I don't know where you get the time, because you're doing these the work at the library and producing all these materials. So, but your involvement. How do you kind of how do you justify, or what's your view on getting involved in these associations?
So I have the unique opportunity, and I'm very honored to be running for ACRL president this year. And the election is coming up not too soon, so please don't forget to vote for either Yasmin or myself. And the campaigning has taken up a lot of time, but I think going back to like why I actually do ACRL and join different associations, I'm involved in other ones as well, is I think I need to break, especially for someone who now works in a solo library, where I didn't traditionally work in a solo library. We actually had a larger staff at one point. It's important to break up that echo chamber. I think it's easy to have the same ideas over and over again and then reassert your same ideas and say that's a really good idea. And I actually learned the most from my work through the association. So giving some of the time that I have to think is actually the time that I have through the association, through ACRL actually, and that work with them and learning. We had a webinar yesterday bringing in an outside speaker, Dr. Carrie Gray, on critical hope. And bringing in people outside of our field is really important for the field to grow. And I think critical hope is, one of the many things that, is very relevant to librarianship in general. So but I would never have known about it without my work through ACRL and without reading outside of our field. And I think bringing in the intersectionality of different fields and librarianship is critical.
So you mentioned reading outside your field. So what do you read in? What do you read in your? If you have any leisure hours, what do you read in your free time?
I don't. I wish I had more time to read mysteries, but I almost everything has to be very selective of what I do read. And right now, I just actually finished a book called A Place to Stand. It was actually signed by a faculty member, and I think it's Jimmy Baca It's Santiago Baca. It wrote it, and it's about prison and becoming a person who was illiterate and learned how to read. And it was actually a book assigned through one of our critical writing faculty. And those are generally the books I'm reading, but almost everything else I read is about AI. And one of the books I'm reading or rereading now is Richard Dreyfuss's What Computers Still Can't Do. And so I think I went to the Modern Literature Association recently in Toronto, and I forced myself to go to a session on AI refusal. And I firmly don't believe in AI refusal because I think that I think I've mentioned this earlier, but you either have one echo chamber or the other echo chamber. So you don't need the AI hype, and you can't just completely refuse something. Because I do recall conversation I remember having at University of Wisconsin-Madison during library school in 2005, before databases really were big. And the student asked the dean, says, well, do I have to write my thesis paper on a computer? And she's like, what do you mean? She's like, well, I'd rather use a typewriter. And she said, well, we're doing information science, so we're using computer. And I think that the same thing goes with AI. I think that at a certain point, we need to find a way to use it to solve different things. And if you are on the fence of using it, it might take some time to figure out what you want to use it for.
I'm in agreement with you. I find one of the things that fascinated me, although it was painful at the time, is the switch to digital, sort of about 20 years ago, was accompanied by lots and lots of sort of refusals of people saying, "Oh, Google is going to be the end of civilization as we know it." But I still think the sort of reading and addressing and listening to sort of what the criticisms are, however much you might disagree with them, is still valid because it enables you to get a kind of critical perspective on. There's probably some justification in what they say. You just need to sort of take it into account.
I think I think the AI refusal session that I went to was critical, and I'd love to write a paper on AI refusal and the idea of refusal in general. And I don't think refusal has to be negative, and that's one of the things I learned from that session. And I think it's good to get a different perspective, and it makes it a lot easier than to talk to students who say that they don't want to use it for different reasons, because we can then have a conversation with those students of why they don't want to use it. We have one student recently refused to use AI, and I started chatting with her, and she's actually from Tennessee, and they're building an AI data center there that uses up a lot of their water. And she feels that using AI for her digital expression or visual expression was about that exact topic of building those data centers was kind of hypocritical. And I was like, well, that makes a lot of sense. And so let's see if we can find an alternative for you. So I think everyone has reasons of why they don't want to use it, but we need to have those conversations of why they don't want to use it rather than just assume it's because they just don't want to learn new tools or something like that.
Well, it's been fascinating talking to you, Russell, and I think there are two areas where I'm really keen to learn more from you in the future. One is about your specific knowledge about AI tools, where I was impressed with your feedback and the comments that you picked up from actual use in practice, as opposed to sort of reading the manual kind of thing. And but the other one is more generally on sort of library culture, and clearly you're getting something right by managing to get these ideas adopted and used across the board, and getting buy-in. So in both those areas, I'm very keen to learn more, and I look forward to more webinars and books that are coming from you in the future.